doop.
Everybody, this is Ted DiBiase, the Elite on Man. And if you want to get your money's worth, stay right here because you're listening to Knockouts at 3 Counts. And remember, everybody's got a price. $1 million man.
This is Don West here, and I'm telling you, Knockouts at 3 Counts is the podcast, baby. Make sure that's the one you check out, because, buddy, like me, they're the real deal, baby.
This is Jake the Snake Roberts. Just letting you know, you need to listen to Knockouts in 3 Counts, or you'll see that damn snake again.
This is the Ring of Honor World Television Champion, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy. And you're listening to Knockouts in 3 Counts.
What up, everybody? This is Kyle, and you are watching Knockouts in 3 Counts. And as we told you on the last episode with our guest tonight, we needed to do a part 2 because there was so many things that got left unasked and all those kind of good things. So back for part 2, we have Aaron O'Ryan. How you doing, brother man?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, man, we're glad to have you. Corey, you were saying the same thing after the show. You called me right afterwards, and we're like, we needed to finish that up because you had a lot of things that you had wanted to ask and things. So what are your thoughts on the return of Mr. O'Ryan?
Well, glad to have you back, of course. And, yeah, I felt like we were just kind of really starting to get to the meat and potatoes of the interview, and then things kind of got cut short due to, time restraints.
Well, now we've got a whole nother show to do here. And like he said, there were a lot of things that we didn't get into. When I went back and watched the last show, we talked a lot about, your time in the military. We talked about military MMA and, kind of like the Michigan indie scene and the beginning of the Death Threat Army. But we didn't even really get to talk much about your career as a whole. So for starters, one of the biggest things that I wanted to know is, what was it that got you into wrestling, and where did this whole thing start for you?
Oh, I'm yelling at these dogs. Dogs, go upstairs. Go upstairs, dogs.
I got 3 at the house. I feel you.
Yeah, good luck. My cats are the
unprofessional start. Dogs, go upstairs. So like the first thing was like, my grandma would watch it way when I was super young, and I thought it was stupid. Like, it was like, I remember this vividly. It was like Macho Man versus Jake the Snake, and I remember laying on our floor that we just went up to Frankenbooth and got a bunch of cheese, okay? So we got a bunch of, like, cheese from Frankenbooth, and, like, we just come back. I lay down on the floor. We're watching, like I said, whatever it was, Raw. It wasn't Raw. It was something like a pay-per-view or something like that, and I'm laying on this, like, I'm laying on the carpet. I'm just pounding this cheese. And then next thing you know, I see Jake the Snake, like, throw the snake in the ring. Like, oh, holy shit, what's going on here? And then I'm just like, man, this is so stupid. Like, this guy has a snake. And then, like, 5 minutes later, I throw up because I ate, like, a whole bag of cheese. And then that was, that was my first, like, memory of, like, oh, that this is wrestling. And it was almost like, I didn't like it, because it wasn't the style of wrestling that I prefer. And then cut to, like, way later in life, like, probably, I mean, not way later, but, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, I stumble upon a cruiserweight match in WCW, and that's what got me hooked as a fan of wrestling, was just, like, watching all the crazy stuff. Go ahead.
Who was it? Was it Ray and Eddie?
No. Ray and Eddie came like after I was already watching. It was a scramble. So it was like, there was like 6 random guys. Like Hoovitude was in it because he was my favorite dude. And then it was like Hoovy, Psychosis, and then dudes who, like, never showed up again. They could have just been random guys, like jobbers wearing masks at that point. But it was just like, it was dive after dive. It was like guys jumping off the top rope all at the same time at each other. It was ridiculous, but it was like that as like a 12-year-old, that's what hooked me. And then as a fan, I like WCW, and I didn't really care about anything else. I didn't even I knew WWF existed, but all I remembered was that it was Jake the Snake throwing a snake at people, and I was just like, dude, whatever. But then this is where everything kind of changed. Is that then I'm flipping through the channels again during Nitro when it's on a commercial, and then I see the dumpster match that is Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie versus the New Age Outlaws. And then
I remember that.
I was hooked. Like, I was like, I want to be that. Like, because, like, I was never Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn's, like, one of my favorite wrestlers ever. And I was never like Billy Gunn. I was definitely more like Road Dogg, but I couldn't talk like Road Dogg could talk, but I looked more like Road Dogg. Like, and I was like, dude, this guy's out here looking like a regular dude, and he's out here shining brighter than anyone shining on the mic, other than a very small handful of people. He's charismatic beyond all belief. And then you have Billy Gunn, who's just like one of the best. Like, to call him one of the best is hard. He's just really fucking good. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss on the thing, but like,
you're good.
Yes. But he's just really good. And he was so charismatic. And I was like, man, I wish I could be like these guys. Like,
let me explain for Corey real quick, because Corey, I know you're not the biggest wrestling guy. So just to kind of give you an outline of the match that he's talking about, I know you know who Mankind and Mick Foley is. Look, dude, it was him and Terry Funk against the New Age Outlaws, like he said, the tag team match. They threw Mick Foley and Terry Funk in a dumpster and threw that bitch off the stage.
And it was, dude, it was nuts. Like, it was like the ultra realism. Dogs, go upstairs.
That's real life. That's realism for you.
I forgot to shut the gate. And I thought they would come down here and just lay down, but there's the guys were down here recording earlier for the Patreon, and they ordered food and stuff, so there's food sitting out, so they're freaking out down here. And
I get that one.
But you know, like, it was like because like WCW was more like character driven, and it was almost like watching a cartoon. And for everything that I was watching, like, it was the luchadors, and they all had colorful masks, and they were jumping all over the place like a bunch of like superheroes. And then I didn't care about anything else in WCW. And then they flip to this, and it's like these dudes are bleeding all over the place. They're beating the shit out of each other. And then you see like Road Dogg, he's cutting these promos, and then Billy Gunn's over there, and he's just super jacked, and he's telling everybody to suck it. And you're just like, man, these dudes, like, that, the New Age Outlaws is what hooked me for life. Like, I remember last year I got to wrestle Billy Gunn, which was like a dream come true. But like, we did the Legends of Wrestling show that was down in Monroe a couple of years ago. And I'm out in the hallway, like, working out, and Billy Gunn comes out there, and this is embarrassing, but like he's out there, and he has like his bands and stuff, and he's working out, and I just go up to him like, hey, Billy, I just want to tell you that you're one of my favorite wrestlers, and you're one of the reasons I started wrestling. And then I fucking scurried off before he could say it. Dude, it was like, and I was like, it was like, I've met a lot of cool wrestlers. Like, I've been in the ring with a lot of really, really big names. I've done a lot of cool stuff, but meeting Billy Gunn for the first time, that was the first time, I was like beside myself.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, though, before we get into, like, you know, you actually training, you know, and you're starting and getting in training and things. You know, you mentioned getting to do a lot of cool things. I was talking to Corey, you know, about some of that, you know, before we went on the air. You know, if I'm not mistaken, you've gotten to work a couple dark matches for WWE, right?
I've never done a dark match for WWE. I've only done a match. It was a battle royal where it came down to me and Baron Corbin.
Yeah, that was it. I just couldn't remember what it was. I knew I had seen the picture from it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so essentially, like, Jake something, we were at a wrestling show. Jake something called me, and he was like, hey, he basically was like, hey, pack your shit. We're going to Raw on Monday. And I was like, oh, what? Like, okay. And then I'd never been to like a WWE show at all. And other than like as like a fan when I was younger, my brother took me to a Raw that was like in Battle Creek for like my birthday one year. When I was, and but other than that, like, I'd never been to a WWE show, and I've especially never been backstage, so I was super nervous. And then so essentially what happened was, like, they had asked Dory Ruby Riott like, hey, we need like 10 guys, and they had only hired like a handful of extras. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be disappointed with half the extras, that show up. So they were like asking around, and they had asked Ruby, like, hey, like, do you know any people? And she's like, oh, I know the perfect people. So then she calls Jake, and then Jake gets a hold of me, Idris Abraham, and then Palmer Cruz. And we all drive to Chicago. And then we're then going to do this battle royal, but we're not all, we need 8 people for this 10-man battle royal, because later it's obviously Baron Corbin is the guy who's doing the issue, so he's one of the 10, right. And then Kurt Angle is dressed up as the conquistador, so he's one. So they have like 12-ish people, 12 to 15 people here for this thing, but they only need 8. So then it's like they went through like a vetting process of like making sure that they're picking like the best guys for like this situation. And also they didn't, like, if you watch the match, they didn't want to use Jake because Jake was too big. And they're like, well, like, because Jake looks like he just killed somebody. And they're like, well, Jake's probably not the best guy. And then they didn't use Palmer Cruz, which they for what you see in the match, there's a lot of awful strikes from guys who have no business. I think they were nervous. They didn't want to like hit Baron Corbin too hard or something. Like, so a lot of these things that happen in this match are like embarrassing to watch, where like if you would have had Palmer Cruz in there, and then Idris Abraham was in the match with me, it would have been a lot better. But for what it was, it's basically just Baron Corbin throwing all these dudes out of the ring, and then it comes down to him and I at the very last. And we have this really, and like, so this is the best part. As you guys know, I was just talking extensively about the New Age Outlaws. So like the best part of this whole entire thing is that Road Dogg is our agent for the match. And he doesn't know that I give a fuck about him in any way. And he never finds out, because I can never say that like out loud to him and at a WWE show. But like, he basically, like, Baron Corbin picks me to be the last guy. Like, he was just like, you're going to be the last guy with me before Angle does their stuff. And I was like, oh, dude, awesome. And then Road Dogg explains to me, like, hey, this is where you have to be. This is what you have to do. And if you don't, you're going to lose your moment. And you're going to fuck this up. And I was like, and he said, like, no one will ever be able to take this moment away if you do it right. And I was like, oh, like, so I got to make sure that I do this. And do it to a point where like I get caught on camera properly. I take my time, and it's everything that everyone always teaches you about TV work. And so then eventually everyone gets eliminated. It comes down to him and I. And then that's what that. My name was Thunder Montgomery. That was my name on WWE. And and I did the claw, which was like my finisher or whatever. And they hyped it up in a promo beforehand. And everyone gets eliminated. Baron Corbin turns around, and I'm standing in the opposite side corner of him. And then I put the claw in the air, dude, and the crowd, like, for what it is, the crowd goes nuts. Like, they're like, what the hell is going on right now? I hit him with, like, the claw thing. The crowd's like, oh, shit. And then he breaks it, punches me, throws me out of the ring, and that's the end of it. He thinks he won. Kurt Angle comes in. And then they do a little spot. That's it. So it was one of those things that, like, it was like, to me, not to anyone else, but like, to me, it was like a movie. Like, even if it just followed the same parameters I was just explaining, like I love the New Age Outlaws. So what got me into wrestling? And then on my journey to this day, I get to be in the same locker room as Billy Gunn. And then I get to WWE, and I get to have Road Dogg agent the match I'm in. And he's telling me, like, hey, if you do this right, no one will be able to take this away from you. You made it to WWE. You got to do all this stuff. You got to be on national TV in front of, 11,000 people or whatever, how many people are there. And then millions of people are going to see it live. And then millions extra are going to see it online later. And then, like I said, the moment goes like exactly how they planned it and exactly how they told me to do it. And everything was like perfect about it. And then we walked to the back, and basically that's it. And then you just kind of go back into the locker room, and we went back to catering, and then just like hung out and watched the rest of the show. And then that was kind of it. And it was just like I said, it was the best case scenario for a situation like that, of never being there and then getting the opportunity to be there in general, and then also getting the opportunity to wrestle on Raw, and then getting the spot that I was granted. Like, everything went perfect for it.
Yeah, you couldn't ask for a better situation in that. And with the parameters given, like you said, short notice, and to end up basically, second in line, that you can't ask for anything better.
It was for all the guys that I've known who get the opportunity to do a dark match or a tape match or whatever. Like, it was, I know guys who've been to WWE 11, 12, 13 times and have had one match, a dark match, and then so to be like, I went one time, and 1 out of 1 times I've got to wrestle on TV, and I had an awesome slot and a memorable thing, and so I say, I couldn't complain about it even if I wanted to.
So let's take that back a little bit. So we talked about, what got you into wrestling. When does that bug become something that you want to pursue?
Oh, New Age Outlaws.
I got you. So, I know why, but I mean, like, when you actually pursued wrestling, how does that come about?
So, like I said, I was watching maybe for just a year-ish, I was watching the Cruiserweights. Not even for a year, because that wouldn't even make sense on a timeline, because the matches happen very simultaneously, of like the luchadors coming into WCW. But then we start wrestling in our backyard. And eventually, like, that becomes like a thing that like people in school start finding out. They're like, because we're doing it every weekend, we're not backyard wrestlers in the sense of like we're hitting each other with like chairs and light tubes and all this kind of stuff. Like, me and my friends are legitimately trying to put on like real shows in our backyard, and we're watching like Tough Enough to try to learn how to bump. We're doing all this stuff, and then eventually the word gets around school where then a random friend of my brother's is like, "Hey, your brother's a wrestler, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, he wants to be." And then she's like, "Okay, cool. There's wrestling that goes on like 25 minutes from my house." And then so then Jeff Brooks comes one day, picks me and my friends up. So it's me, Christopher Saint, Adam Sniper, and Donnie Crow. So Donnie Crow doesn't wrestle anymore. Adam Sniper doesn't wrestle a lot anymore because he has vertigo all of a sudden, because he's an old man. But he spent a lot of time with us when we first started, and he also wrestles for like Chainsaw still, same as Christopher Saint wrestles for Chainsaw. And we pile into his car and we go to the show, the MWO, Michigan Wrestling Organization. So that's where we start wrestling at, and we start training with Levi Blue. And we do that I was 15 when I started, and then 15, 16, and then the summer of 17, or actually like the fall of when I'm 17, we go to Xavier Justice, like first ever PPW school, where then we start training. And then from there, while we're training, we're wrestling, like we're like, this is before like the PPW had a training center or had like like an actual training facility. This is just in Xavier's barn, and it's us four and then Cody Manning, and who wrestles for PPW. And we do like 4 months of training or whatever in the barn in the middle of winter, essentially. And we start wrestling while we're doing this. We start wrestling for like CIW. We're doing security for XI at the time for Mike McMahon, when he was like Vince McMahon's long lost son, if you were around for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I was going, but at the time I was like, shit, I might have been Corey, to give you a timeline. Now, Corey and I have known each other since we was probably 11 years old. So the timeline he's talking about, Corey, is probably around the time we were, I would say, freshmen or sophomores. Okay. So I'd have been like 14, 15, something like that.
Okay.
So then like we're doing all that, and then at this time, and still kind of to this day, if we're being honest about it, but like Xavier Justice has like a bad name in the indies. Just like a lot of things that could contribute to it, but it's a lot of just like trying to be Ric Flair. Like when you're young in wrestling and you get popular, like you try to be what you see in wrestling. So everyone wants to be Ric Flair. Ric Flair's the one, he's partying, he has all the girls, and he's just such a good wrestler, but no one's Ric Flair. So then what it ends is that you're just an asshole who's partying all the time and doesn't like take wrestling serious, regardless if you're taking it serious or not. That's like the appeal that you give out to, or the unappeal that is like going out into the world. And so like maybe like a year and a half after we start training, I stopped working for Xavier for the better part of the next 10 years, essentially. And then while I'm in the Army, we eventually squashed the issues we had, which, was whatever. And then when I come back, then I become like a coach at his training facility. And so from there, we kind of get shit on like right away, the four of us, because everyone hates Xavier Justice, and especially in Detroit. So then
so guilt by association.
Yes. And so we basically can't go to Detroit at all because we get shit on. There was a time where I remember it was like Nate Matson, and I love these guys now, but like when I first started, I also was like, I didn't look like a wrestler, I'm not the same guy I was, but like Nate Matson, Truth, Jamie Cox, like all these people come up to us after we're like, we come and set up the ring, we're doing security or whatever, and they come up and start like, Eddie Venom's one of them too, and they're like, you guys don't belong in a wrestling ring, and they're yelling at Adam Sniper, who's like a really small guy, like a cruiserweight guy, like you guys don't you guys don't belong in a wrestling ring, you guys this, you guys that. And I was like, man, I hate this, like I don't want to be a part of that. Like, so we just like for 10 plus years, we like never go back to Detroit and wrestle ever. And that's kind of like where we got like exposed to like the drama of the wrestling world, where like that's where like a handful of guys just stopped wrestling, like the guys that we train with and stuff. Some of them just stopped completely because they're like, dude, like they're like, I don't want to be a part of that. Like that's not fun. And like the one thing I always try to keep for myself was just like, dude, no matter what, make sure wrestling stays fun. Like don't get into the BS, don't get into the drama, don't get into anything like that. Just go there, have fun, like do the thing that you love, and like don't forget what got you here. Don't forget that there's nothing different about wrestling in your backyard when you're 13 years old and wrestling in a bar somewhere or a community center somewhere when you're 18. Like it should feel the same. You should feel the love of it. And a lot of the guys lost the love of it because it became like this weird nonsense of like there's like the weird cliques and there's like the guys trying to hold everyone down, and so that like goes like off the rails for like a while, and then 2012, 2013, we kind of like break the mold, and now people are looking at us as individuals instead of like Xavier Justice students. And then everything's going good, and that's where I leave for the Army. So that's kind of like the first couple of years of like the Aaron Orion timeline.
So when you get out of the military, though, I mean, like, did you already know when you got out, though, that you wanted to get back in, or is it something where you went and tried to go do your thing for a little bit and it kind of just came back around? Or how do you get to where we're at now, where we see you with the Death Threat Army and all those things? How does that, when you come out of the military, how does that come to be?
Well, we talked about this briefly on the last show, was like, in the military we were wrestling, but we can only wrestle like very, very limited amounts of times because like we were what's called like a rapid deploy unit. So they could call you for training. I mean, they could call you for anything, but like they were known to call you on the weekends for training. They were known to call, like there's like, we were preparing to go to Africa, and we would get calls at like 3:00 in the morning, pack our bags, we're going. And as far as we knew, we were going, but it was all like a drill. And so like we'd like, hey guys, get ready, we're leaving, and be here in 90 minutes with your bags packed, have everything here, blah blah blah. And we were like, oh, okay, well here we go, we're leaving, like this is finally happening. And we get there, we load everything up in like a big Connex box, and then like 5 minutes after everything's loaded and we're all standing in formation, like, oh, this is really about to happen. Like, all right guys, be back at 9:00, or be back at 6:30 for PT or whatever. We're like, dude, we're not doing it. Was just like a drill, like a preparation drill. Because you have to meet certain standards if you want to qualify as a rapid deployment unit. So then Jamie and I had tried to take bookings. So like I meet Jamie. We talked about that last time. I meet Jamie. We become friends. We become a tag team. We become Death Threat. But while like Death Threat's almost taking off, he gets deployed to Poland. And so then I'm back out on my own, and my unit is so finicky about like, hey guys, we're this weekend you're going to be doing this. This weekend you're going to be doing it. And then I break my foot, and then so like everything kind of falls apart. but even before that, even before like I broke my foot and stuff like that, it was maybe wrestling once a month, maybe twice a month if we were lucky. So like it never really took off the way we wanted to in Georgia, just because of the things that we were doing. And obviously, like they always say, like in the Army, they say family first, Army always, but it's actually Army always, and your family's there too, but they just have to deal with everything you're doing. And that was kind of like what we were the victim was, is like, it doesn't, like, it doesn't really matter what's going on, what your life is out, like, from 6 o'clock till 6:30 in the morning. So it was really hard to take bookings. And also, like, I hate the idea of having to cancel a booking. Like, so then it was just like, okay, well, we can wrestle for this place and this place. And then maybe if we can, we'll jump on a different show. And I said, and then Jamie goes to Poland for like 6.5 months and then comes back and go like 4 months or 4 weeks later, goes like right back to Poland again. So then like when I get home, and I won't go hard into it because we went hard into it last time, but it was Saint and I, and then Jack and I, and we were talking about how we wanted to build everything. We wanted to build these guys up, give back to the young guys that we believed in, blah, 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 blah. So there was an effort made because we wrestled all over, like we wrestled in, like from Georgia down to Florida up to Tennessee. We wrestled a bunch of times in the 4 years I was there, but like, and we traveled a lot, but it was one of those things of like, you can't promise a booking to a promoter when you actually, you can't even promise it to yourself because you never know what the hell's going to happen.
Right.
Corey, and so another thing that goes with that, so you're talking about how you got back into it once you got out of the military, now, you've been wrestling steadily for a while now. Now that we're starting to see more of these shows starting to come back with all this COVID stuff, whether it be TKW or, XI's done a few, the house party shows and things like that. I mean, what are your thoughts on what we've seen so far, man? It's been interesting because, you and I talked a little bit briefly before we went on the air, I just found out yesterday that Jake, who you just mentioned, in past guest of our show, is going to be on with another past guest of our show, Sam Adonis, on the the Independent Wrestling Expo that's going on in Texas. Like, what do you think so far of what we've seen of these attempts to try to redo shows?
I like it. And we kind of went on this on the last show too. Is like you see, like GCW, they're doing it right. Like I think they're doing it right because like the setting matters, and that's I think what we lose here, what we're losing here in Michigan. Other than like I think Chainsaw's doing it really really well. The setting of your show matters, and GCW has that right. Like they're doing it on the pier, they're doing it next to the ocean, they're doing it next to a boardwalk. They had their backyard themed show where they did it in the backyard, but for the most part, a lot of their shows they're in like huge parks. They look like they have a nice setup, and also the camera angles and stuff are really good to make sure that you're not like seeing a lot of empty weird space and stuff like that. And like I said, like, I love XI. I love Horror Slam. I love Chainsaw. I've never been to the Total Chaos place, but I'm sure I'll be there someday. But like the show has to go on, right? So like when my mom passed away when I was like 17 years old, not like when I was 17, when I was 17, I expected like the world to stop and like wait on me and my brothers to like recover from that. And I remember like our principal of our high school, and she'd be like, hey, like, it is sad, but you guys got to keep moving. You got to keep, like, you're going to face adversity in your life. And obviously this is something that no child should ever have to like deal with, but like, you have to move on. You have to keep it moving. And this is the same thing. Like if we wanted to sit and cry about not being able to wrestle in a building, then wrestling would just die. And then it like for how hot everything was prior to COVID coming in, like, why would you ever risk losing that by just being like, you know what, I can't run a show? Well, then fuck it. I'm just not going to do one. When you have so many people who don't give a damn where your show is. They don't give a damn about the lighting. They don't give a damn about your entrance. Like they 95% of the people who come to your shows, especially in rural areas, they don't care about your setup. They care about the people in the ring. And that's absolutely it. So it's like you can't cry over spilled milk. COVID spilled milk all over this bitch. but we have to keep it moving. So it's like I can appreciate
I love it, dude.
you know, what everyone's doing to try to stay on track and try to keep like the ball rolling.
I mean, that's the craziest thing about it. Like, I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen. You know, you don't know what you're going to do, you know, but you bring up another thing that we were just starting to scratch the surface on, and something that we've tried to do our best here at Knockouts and Three Counts to provide you guys with. And that's what I think all wrestlers, or fighters for that matter, are having to do right now. And that's coming up with content, man. Coming up with content to keep yourself out there, to keep yourself in people's faces, even though you can't have shows every weekend. I know you mentioned it briefly on the last show, but we didn't really get to go into it. So tell me a little bit about, you know, you mentioned the DTA Patreon and things like that. But, you know, I know you guys are going to be doing a little web series with that stuff. And, you know, I know that this whole thing started as your road to re-enlistment thing originally. So tell us a little bit about that and what you guys got cooking with the new content coming from the DTA boys.
So, like, okay, so the road to re-enlistment thing, there will be more episodes eventually, but man, it's hard. Like, that's hard to do. Like, and it's good for me to do. Like, it's good for me to talk about it, but it's hard to talk about. And like there were so many times where like the camera, like cause I recorded it all by myself. It's not like I have like a crew there recording me. I probably couldn't even do it if someone else was standing there. But like to be able to talk about and making yourself vulnerable to be able to talk about something like my son's going through, that's hard. And it's like, it's so taxing to like stand against and fight against. And then like I wanted to build this thing like for me, but also for him, so then like later in life he can look at it and be like, man, like even if he doesn't remember anything that's going on right now, he can look at it and be like, man, my dad was standing strong for me and fighting for me through everything I had to go through. Like I want that for him, and I want that for me, because I want to be able to look back and be like, man, like that was the worst situation, that was the worst time I've ever had in my life, but we stuck it out and we stayed strong and everything worked out. Like, so like doing that, it was a lot of fun to do, because I was going to Truth Martini school all the time. Like every day I'd leave the hospital, because I was staying at the hospital this time. And at this time too, my daughter was with my brother, and they were up north at their cabin. So like I didn't have a lot to do. Like I didn't have a lot to worry about, rather. I had a lot to do, but like I didn't have a lot to worry about, because she was taken care of. She was having a good time. She was having fun. And so I didn't have to worry about, you know, like she's 11. So she needs, you know, she already needs a lot of attention from her parents, but she needs attention even more now, because her brother, her best friend, is now, you know, like missing in action, and she has no idea what's actually going on. So it was really fun to be able to go down there and wrestle every day and kind of like, and get a lot of like the demons out while being at Truth Martinis, and then be able to come home and kind of talk about it and say like, hey, like this is what's going on. This is what he's going through, and shed a couple of tears for it. Like I know it's good for me, but it's like I said, it's fucking hard to do. And but now she's home. And like I as any parent would, I would hope any parent would, like you're obligated to make sure that, you know, like why, obviously you gotta make sure he's okay medically and emotionally, but it's hard to check out him emotionally. So you just got to be there, hang out with him, have a good time with him when you're with them. But that goes the same for my daughters. You got to like make sure that she's not, you know, like she's not becoming emotionally scarred. She's not feeling neglected. She's not like, so it's like I go way out of my way to make sure that like she doesn't feel like she's just kicked to the curb. And so then now that she's back home, it's a lot harder to be like, hey guys, I'm going on the Truth. Can you go to your friend's house? Can you go here? You know, she can't go to the hospital. So like, it's like, it becomes harder and harder to get down there and do that kind of stuff. And so then that kind of led to like, man, like, what are we going to do for like the DTA fans that love us? And like, what are we going to do for them to keep giving them like you got Vendetta still wrestling, Wick still wrestling, Jack still wrestling. Well, like, we're not wrestling nearly as frequently as we were before. I'm having a heart attack. So it's like, what can we do to give these people more and like give our fans more? And that's where like Saint had came up with like doing a Patreon, and I was like, man, like who's gonna pay for a Patreon? And then like the more and more we thought about it, I was like, well, what we'll do is we'll come out with like our own stuff, and that will be free, and we'll have free content, and it's like, hey man, if you want extra, come to the Patreon. And then so that's where we came up with like all these shows, like Whiskey Watching Wrestling, which is just like me and the boys sitting down watching either our wrestling matches or just matches that we enjoy, and then drinking whiskey or drinking White Claws and just kind of getting a little tipsy while watching these matches. And like the first couple times we did it, and it's the same as like if you watch a match with your friends, like you start talking shit about stuff that you shouldn't be saying. You're making jokes to try to make everyone laugh. So like when I'm editing all the videos, it's like, man, we got to edit this. Oh, this motherfucker's so stupid. We got to edit this out. We got to cut this out. There's so many beeps and funny responses and stupid things that people say that makes it so much fun to do. And then like the toilet bowl wrestling and the pro wrestling dad is still like a thing where there's like going to be skits and stuff along with us watching bad wrestling. So similar to like Colt Cabana did like the $5 wrestling, we have the boys sit down and watch a really, really bad wrestling match or a bad wrestling montage or like a Botchamania-esque, except for I hate Botchamania, so we would never watch that. But like, so that's the toilet bowl wrestling stuff, and then obviously the toilet bowl wrestling skits that I did when I was in the military and stuff, like those will still be around because that's what kind of made toilet bowl wrestling famous for me. Not necessarily famous like nationwide, but like I became known as like the pro wrestling dad, and everyone always wanted to see more pro wrestling dad skits and little like videos, and they wanted to see the toilet bowl wrestling. So then my daughter and I are starting a pro wrestling dad podcast where then it's just me and her. We're gonna BS about random stuff, and then we'll go into like our skits and stuff that like are real life stuff. It's all like it's real life. Like it's funny because like the nurses found out. I don't know if like my wife told them or what, but like they found the pro wrestling that stuff online. And when I'm at the hospital, I'm not chit chatting with these people. Like I'm hanging out and like, man, it's me and Wyatt and we're doing our thing. And all of a sudden, like I have one of the nurses come in and she was like, "You are so funny. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Like, and she was like, "Well, I watched your pro wrestling dad videos and you guys are so cute and I can't believe this and blah, 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 blah." And I was just like, man, like that stuff works. Like, I know it works. It's like one of those time tested things of like, I've done those for years and everyone has always loved them. But then I just like talk myself out of making them because I'm an idiot. And then, like I said, there's tons of other random stuff that pops up on the podcast or on the Patreon. That's just like behind the scenes stuff, extras, us sitting down doing like the Q&As, all the kind of nonsense. And we haven't really promoted it that hard. We talked about it on your guys' show, and then we made like one post about it because I wanted to have a lot of content on there before we started like pushing it really, really hard. So now we're basically 2 weeks in, and then we'll be making a big commercial push. Like, hey guys, go to our Patreon, check out all this really cool stuff we have.
So that's a great segue into the other thing that we wanted to talk about from the first episode. We started to get into the story of Wyatt Strong. We started to talk about how it all came about and what that was like for you guys, in the journey to the hospital and, going through the day of the surgery and things. I guess my question now is, you're talking about adjusting to life after after the surgery, how are things for you guys now? How is Wyatt doing? And, what's the daily road like right now as opposed to where you guys were, maybe before surgery?
Well, before surgery, everything was great because like I didn't have like a regular life job. I was just wrestling. So it was me and the kids full time every single day, taking them to school, picking them up, hanging out, going on bike rides, going to the beach, doing all, excuse me, drinking the White Claws too fast now. But like doing normal stuff, like fun stuff that I wish I would have had a dad around for. And I think that's my biggest driving issue or problem. Like for my kids, is like, man, I want to be the dad that I never had. So like, I want to be there and do the fun stuff. I want to go on spontaneous trips and go up to, the UP or do this or go here and have fun on a moment's notice. And like, that's how we lived our lives. Like from the moment that they were out of school, it was like, hey, you got your homework done? Okay, cool. Now it's time to go have some fun. Now it's time to go do this. Now let's go do this. And then not knowing, because like I said, like before, is like there was never like a real big issue with him when it came to like having so like he maybe have 2 headaches a month. Like, and we were just like, yeah, kids have headaches. I don't know. Like, it just seems normal. Like, we've already kind of been through it with Bailey.
Yeah, right.
And so it was never like a thing where we were like, man, this is odd, or this is too much, or this is, until like the very, very last minute where we go get him an MRI and they're like, hey, get to the hospital now. So then it became myself and my wife just sat at the hospital with him for basically like 40 days. And eventually, like when he came off of the ventilator, they kicked one of us out because because of the COVID nonsense, you can only have one parent there at a time. So then I was forced to come home, which was like it's for the best. But and then fast forward to like now, it's like he does radiation early in the morning, and the more and more he kind of comes out of this, it's called post-phasia syndrome, which is like it's essentially like his brain, like he's like stuck in his brain. So like he knows what's going on, he can see what's going on, he can feel what's going on, but he can't but his brain isn't connected to his voice. It's not connected to his body. It's like his brain works for thinking, but that's absolutely it. And so his movements are very sporadic. And the more and more he becomes, the further and further he comes out of this, the more and more you can see that like he's still the same kid, and he's just like stuck in this weird, like, not a coma, but like he's like almost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like so like the other day, I was up there. I was up there for a couple days in a row, and everything's going good. And like, I remember my wife was like, "Oh well," like because it was supposed to be like the first day that Bailey was going to see him in 3 months, and I was very adamant about making this happen. You know, like I was like, she needs to see him, he needs to see her, so like that's important. And the first day we were supposed to go is like a Tuesday, and she's like, well, he's having a really bad day today. He wasn't able to do radiation because he was freaking out, and he's been crying a lot all day. And then I go up there alone on Tuesday, mad because I wanted Bailey to see him. And then me and him are hanging out all day, and everything is great. Like great, he's not talking, he's not running around, jumping around, but like as his father, I know that he is doing, I can see it, I can feel it, like our interactions are better. And I'm just like, man, like he's not, because my wife is like the most worried person of all time, and like obviously rightfully so in this situation, but also he could have had a sliver and her reaction would have been exactly the same as him having a tumor. So like I'm with him and she's gone, and like I'm like, man, like you're not having a bad day, dude. You just want to get up and do stuff, like, because like, you know, we're eating candy, we're doing like, you know, we're up walking, like I'm helping him walk, we're in the wheelchair, we're running around, you know, like the hospital, getting yelled at by the security and stuff because we're flying around the corners and stuff. We're outside, we're inside, we're upstairs, downstairs, going up the elevator, coming down the elevator, just doing all this fun stuff that most likely you're not supposed to do. But I'm a child as well, so it's like, and also, what are you going to say to me? My son has cancer, so shut up. Like, I'm going to do what I want. And then, so we're having a good time, and like, he never cried. He never, like, there was no complaints from him. There's no nothing. I was like, man, like, he's not having a bad time. Like, he's having a bad time because he can't move. He can't talk. He can't communicate. It's more of a frustration than it is like he's in pain. He's having a seizure. He's doing this. He's just mad. He's mad because he knows his life is supposed to be different. He knows he's supposed to be able to get up and walk. He knows he's supposed to talk. He knows he's not supposed to be, you know, like peeing in a diaper. He knows these things. And like, so when I'm with him, I was like, man, he's not having his issue is mentally. It's not like he's in pain or his stomach hurts or his head hurts or anything like that. And I bring it up to the doctors, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, that does kind of make sense. And then Thursday, I get the same thing from my wife, like, oh, he's having a bad day today, I don't want to risk having Bailey see him and he's not responsive to him, blah 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 blah. And I was like, no, Bailey's coming, bring Wyatt outside because she's not allowed in the hospital. I was like, we're coming, so be ready. And I'm already, like, I'm mad at this time, because like I said, I have a very, very deep connection to my siblings. Not my little brother, but like my older brother. We're only like 9 months apart, or a couple months, you know, like we're like a year apart-ish. And like, so like for him and I, we're super close. And now that we're adults, me and my little brother are close. But like my best friends were like my brothers when I was growing up. So it's like, I know the same as anybody knows who has like a really close friend or best friends or really close siblings. Like, that stuff matters. Like, seeing them matters. It makes you feel better. It makes you, you know, it makes you think clearer. And like, so I was like, these guys spend every single day around each other. They need to see each other. And eventually, like after a couple minutes of me being blood curdling mad, we meet Wyatt outside, and then he's so pumped, and he's like he's not, like I said, he's not jumping around for joy or anything, but you can see it in his face, you can see it like in his eyes, you can see it like he's trying to smile, he wants to get up and like he wants to move around with her. And then we do his PT stuff, we do his OT stuff, and everything's going great. And I was like, man, he's not like, it goes back to the same thing I thought on Tuesday. Like, I was like, he's not having a bad day. He's not having this. He's not having that. He's just ready to be done with all this bullshit. Like this tumor and cancer, like has stole what seems like his whole entire life to him. He's sick, so he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know any different. He for all he knows, this could be the rest of his life. And he wants to go back to being normal. He wants to go back to, playing, going on the bike rides and playing on the trampoline and doing all this stuff. So then, like, to get him back to just doing the normal stuff that, like, as a parent, he likes, you'll never hear a complaint out of him. He doesn't cry. He doesn't, he doesn't whine. He doesn't nothing. He's just like, he'll just do his thing and be happy. And that's kind of what we've, like, figured out the past couple of days of, like, he's 6. Don't forget that he's 6. Don't forget that he's a child. No matter what he's going through, he's still a kid, and he still wants to have fun, and he doesn't understand what's going on, but he does know what's going on in his surroundings.
And that goes to what we were talking about last time with working with kids with disabilities. You hit the nail on the head. He knows what's going on. He's just kind of having to work the cobwebs out almost to a degree,
right.
And so, it's cool to kind of hear where you guys are at now. I've been following the story ever since, you guys had first brought it out, what was going on. And like I said, man, you guys are in my prayers with that. And the link to the GoFundMe and all that will be in the description of the video if you guys are checking this out on YouTube and all that good stuff. So let's change the mood a little bit. So we talked a little bit about MMA last time, but if any of you guys watch MMA that are watching this, you know that there's a pretty big fight that's going to happen this weekend. And since you're a wrestler, I figured who better to ask about the heavyweight title fight than a wrestler. So what are your thoughts on the whole DC Stipe fight? Will you be watching it, first of all? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I'll definitely be watching it. Stipe is one of my favorite fighters. And I love DC too. So this is one of the situations. It's like when Conor McGregor fought Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone is my favorite fighter, bar none, like no questions asked. So like, when that fight was happening, I was like, dude, no matter what, win, lose, or draw, it sucks that it happened the way it happened. I wish that, like, even if Conor would have beat him in 3 rounds or 5 rounds or whatever, I would have been like, hell yeah. Because then, it was weird because it doesn't make any sense to think this way for someone I don't even know. But I was like, at least I know that like, no matter what happens out of this match, Donald Cerrone's making some money from it. That's like all I could think of was like, thank God he's finally getting a shot at like a couple $1 million, right? Like. And like this isn't as bad because I already know like these guys are in the spotlight. They swap the championship back and forth, so it's like I already know they're making money. But Stipe is just like he's just one of my favorite fighters in general. And then I love DC as a personality and as a fighter. And I was like, man, all I want is like a good match because the last 2 fights they've been like spontaneous knockouts, kind of like out of nowhere. Especially the first one, not as much as when Stipe won it back, but like. The first match ended in like 40 seconds or something. I mean, it was probably a little longer than that, but it was very, very quick. And I was just like, oh, son of a bitch. Like, you can't, like, Stipe, even if Stipe loses this one, you can't go down like that. You can lose, but you have to, like,
it can't be a knockout.
You can't, even if you get knocked out in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, make it a fight.
Cool.
So what are your thoughts then on what DC's saying about this is going to be his last fight, win, lose, or draw?
I think it's both their last fights.
I can see that.
Like from the things that I've like, I'm not deep into like MMA news, but the couple things that I've heard and the couple things that I've read, this is their last fight. Like it's most like, and obviously everyone can be bought back to have another fight, but like Stipe is already the most winningest heavyweight of all time. And all he needs is a big iconic knockout again of someone like DC to be able to like, be like I did this. No one can take that shit away. I think he has the most knockouts in heavyweight history. He's fought the best fighters in UFC history as a champion, not necessarily as a heavyweight champion. He has beaten more names, to use like a wrestling term. He's beaten more names than any other heavyweight champion. Like, he is time tested as like one of the best heavyweights of all time. So for him to ride out in the sunset against someone like DC and in a heavyweight title fight, and after this, no matter what, he's going to retire. I would love to see Stipe win, because like I said, Stipe is my guy. But also, if DC wins, I want to be like, fuck, dude, like that's still dope. Like, I'm not gonna be mad, because like I said, I love DC just the same. Like, I mean, not just the same, because like I said, like Stipe is my second favorite fighter next to Donald Cerrone. But like, when Stipe came in back in the day, like like a couple of years ago, I was just like, whatever, dude. And then he starts just roasting these dudes. I was like, oh, this dude's pretty fucking dope, man. And then watching him a couple, like through the past couple of years that I've been watching, I don't know, since like 2016 or something. How long has he's been in the UFC for a minute, but he's only been a big dog for the past 4 years.
I would say the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And he comes in and he's just starching dudes out. And I was like, okay, dope. And he's been a champ or in the championship contendings for the past 3 of those 5 years, let's say, 2 at least. So it's like obviously he's an easy dude to like as oh, that's my favorite fighter, because he's, like I said, like he's the most winningest heavyweight of all time. He's one of the best heavyweight fighters of all time. But I won't be mad either way, as long as the fight's good. This is the same thing I said for Donald Cerrone and Conor McGregor. I was like, as long as the fight's good, it doesn't even matter. It literally doesn't matter who wins. Like, obviously it matters to them.
If you're betting and you got to bet the house, who's it gonna be?
I don't like that at all.
Hey man, look. You've met Devin and the guys on the show that are usually with us, and I don't ever get to get out of picks. So since I get to run the show, that's how you got to make a pick.
Let's say it's for sure DC's last fight, because he's announced it. I haven't heard Stipe actually physically say this is his last fight. I've only just heard that it's his last fight. Unfortunately, I would assume it has to be DC then. Like, even though I want Stipe to win,
you think
if it was me and I was as good as DC is, and I was as talented as DC is, and I have one more fight to prove that I am one of the best of all time, I'm going to die in that goddamn octagon. So I would say that if you had to pick, I would pick DC.
All right, you've got it. There's his pick. And hey, if you guys are watching this, let us know in the comments who you got. But I can't tell you who I'm gonna pick, because you got to stay tuned for our picks with our homie Miles Jury, who's gonna be doing his thing. He just did his thing last Friday in Bellator. Miles is gonna be coming and making his picks along with us for the Stipe and DC fight. So stay tuned to our YouTube channel and all that so that you don't miss it. Well, I just want to say thanks for the time, brother, man. It's been cool to kind of chat and kick it and get to know you a little bit better. Like I said, I mean, I've seen you around some of the shows, but we never really got to chat like that. I just want to thank you for being open and, talking with us about the whole story with what's going on with your family. And like I said, man, if there's anything I can do on my end to help out with that, let me know. And like I said, dude, when we see each other around these shows, dude, we'll definitely have to get a beer once all this COVID bullshit's out the way.
Hell yeah.
Corey, you got anything else?
You pretty much hit the nail on the head, man. It was nice having you on the show. It was nice to be able to kind of get a couple more questions across, regarding the whole Wyatt situation. And I wish the best for you guys. I know I had my daughter go through a little bit of a health scare when she was younger, and that shit's not fun, man. Young kids never want to go through that, and especially I dealt with the same thing. The older sibling, trying to make sure that she felt as though she was still getting the attention, even though the younger one was clearly the one needing more attention. So it's nice to hear that we all go through the same struggles. It's just on what level, of course.
Hell yeah.
Well, like I said, man, knockouts and 3 counts, obviously, we're here to talk wrestling and MMA, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Like I said, man, we're not going to just give you all that bullshit question, and we're getting to the nut cutting on these interviews. But like I said, until next time, make sure you are watching. Hey, the UFC Contender Series was tonight. Make sure you're checking us out next week as we bring you LFA 125-pound champion Jimmy Flick before his fight for the Dana White Contender Series next week. Hey, and shout out to TJ Larmy, who's going to war tonight on Dana White's Contender Series. And hey, a little birdie told me you might have to be looking for a boss coming up on the Contender Series, or maybe in the UFC somewhere soon. Hey, I don't know. But stay tuned to our channel and you'll see it. And until next time and in the in-between time, stay safe. Peace.
Peace.